Okay, so today we're going to start by talking about your project and what I have so far as rough drafts. Today's due date stuff said sketch a first quadrant scatter plot with the scale being a 1/2 inch in both directions. Make the x-axis time in months and the y-axis amount of daylight hours. You should have 36 points. Should you connect the dots or not? So I actually have a variety of connect the dot or not to talk about, so that's exciting. This will serve as your first draft graph, so you can get the scale just right and spot any miscalculations. So I can see some miscalculations now that they're graphed, and we can talk about that so you can get that fixed. You may need to do a second rough draft if you have some miscalculations happening. So let's see if we can compare these and find out where the miscalculations might be. So most of these I would say are connected. Who's going to argue connected or not connected and why? Who can tell me some stuff? What do you think? Connected. Who's on the Pro Connect team? Go, Max. He thinks for the video.
Hold on a second. I think that it's a lot more aesthetically pleasing and it connects a lot of the data.
Okay, so I can't spell that, so I'm going to write pretty.
P-S-T-H-E-T.
It already happened, pretty. He said aesthetically pleasing, which I wrote as pretty. Piper?
It connects because the data is continuous.
Okay, data continuous. So, but did people connect? Did they connect all the 36 points?
Together?
I feel like you can better tell which set of data is for what.
Okay, so each set of data connected based on city?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I don't think anybody connected all 36 points, so that's good. And then we have not connected. Is that because we weren't sure how to connect them?
No.
Or we just... Okay. There's more than one. You're one of them.
I didn't do it either.
I said one, I didn't connect because it's a whole month apart, so it doesn't give you an accurate comparison
Okay.
of time jumps. And also, it's mostly personal preference.
So continuous versus, that doesn't say apart, but it would if I fixed it. Versus, it's they're like 21st day, and then the next 21st day without having the 22nd, the 23rd, and then, is that what you're saying? So you're arguing that they're not connected.
Because it's so far apart, it doesn't give you an accurate representation.
Okay, so not continuous. Question mark. Continuous question mark. Okay. What else? Anybody not connected have a reason? Or you just weren't sure? Okay. What is the purpose of our graph?
To show the daylight hours in a certain year.
Daylight hours. So the context. That's what I'm getting at. Daylight hours. Okay, let's take that in consideration as we look through some of these. So this one versus this one versus this one versus this one. Do y'all see any similarities or differences? Okay, they all have different. Okay, so tell me about Alaska. Alaska, a lot of daytime. More fluctuation, a lot of day. I'm going to say daylight. And then fluctuation. Olivia?
Can you put Arlen back on the screen?
Which one?
Okay.
Okay.
So they, like, at one point, they're all the same.
At one point, they're all the same. That's beautiful. So this one shows it pretty clearly. This one shows it pretty clearly, right? 1 point, they're all the same. Ooh, good observation. All three same month and same daylight hours. That's me putting it in context. So you said same point, and I'm going to say same month and same daylight hours. Okay, good observation. Okay, so as we look through some of these, what is, if you compare, I'm going to zoom out so we can see more picture. Tell me a difference between this one and this one.
The pages turn.
Okay, so is that good or bad?
They don't have the same scale.
They don't have the same
At the
scale.
end, I didn't have enough room.
They sort of have the same scale.
Not really.
It starts at 5.
Also the month ones are also more like an inch than half an inch.
No, they're half inches. I measured.
Oh, never mind. No, because
0 to 1 is January to February is an inch.
Yeah.
This is a rough draft. This is what we're trying to fix, right? So having something to show everybody is important. Okay, so in order for us to compare year to year, what do you think happens, like year to year? Do we have similar daylight or different daylight? Similar, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't know what's going to happen in spring or summer or fall. Pretty much every year, the same thing happens. So even though y'all have different years, these should look very similar. Otherwise, we wouldn't know to plant stuff in the summer. Like, it would all be different. So these should look very similar. So I would like to have the same scale for all of them. So if you started yours with 5, then, and I get why you would start with 5, but Max, do you want to explain why you started with 5?
Because it was the lowest identifiable value.
Yeah, so, and this one's got, starting with 1, I guess, one's just not noticed. So I thought it skipped. It really doesn't, excuse me. But this is also a sideways piece of paper. 2, 4. Oh, it does skip, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's
How does this skip? Right, this is a 1/2 inch, but this is 2. So we needed to turn it like this. And you'll see why I want you to do that later. But I really want everybody to have the same scale. So how could we describe that? What do I want it to look like scale-wise? Do I want it to look like portrait or landscape?
Portrait.
Okay, so I want it to look like this one with a 1/2 inch going up and a 1/2 inch going left to right, so that they're all the same. Your final draft is not going to be on lined paper. It's going to be on not lined paper, so plain paper. It could be on graph paper if you need it to be. You're going to get style points, so if you could make it pretty without having lines, that'd be even better. Yes?
So, okay, if you were going to, like, paint it, you just have to, like, paint the lines and everything? Paint little dots? Or how would that
Well,
work? I guess I'm
I don't know if, maybe you need to take this one. Whose can I mess with? Who cares?
Mine, because mine's bad.
Which one's yours?
Mine has, like, the jaggedy ends. The
Jaggedy
line.
ends.
Jaggedy. Because I just ripped it out of my notebook.
Oh,
It's
jaggedy
not
ends with
connected.
you. Do I see it? I found it. All right. So I'm going to mess with Rachel's. So what if you were going to paint it? Could you take this and fold it? So you could mark, maybe you do it this way, so you could see how, you could measure it on a piece of paper, and then you could draw. You still probably want to draw a line that has both, but you could reference something else, even if it doesn't have lines. You could use the lines from this piece of paper.
Okay.
Is that making sense? So the rough draft you should use to help you do better. And then, would that help? That is pretty. And it's got a key and everything. So did we decided we're going to connect them, right, by city? Yeah, okay. So we should connect them by city. Now, this is the orientation, so not landscape. And then what else do I want to talk about? let's talk about the data. So this particular graph, Alaska goes up and then back down. Blue is New Bern. New Bern goes up and then back down, and then it goes up again. Looks like it. I would check that. I would just check this point right here. And then purple is New York. It goes up and then back down. What do y'all know? What's coming up this weekend? Do you know?
Prom.
Prom is not coming up this weekend. It's still daylight savings, but it's the other way, right?
You lose an hour of sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, is that going to change the daylight hours?
Yeah.
Is it going to change?
It's gonna get darker
Does the
later.
Earth? But does the Earth know that we're having daylight hours?
No.
It changes over time.
We're still not the same amount of hours.
We're still going to have the same amount of hours. So when we subtract the numbers differently, even if we called midnight noon, the Earth doesn't care what we call it, right? Daylight savings does not change the actual amount of daylight. It just changes how we wake up and use the daylight. Okay, so I just want to make that point. Because people are trying to figure out how to calculate that after daylight hours. And you don't have to, because the daylight hours are going to be the same, whether or not we have daylight savings times. Parker, do you have a question?
This is a fun fact. Did you know Arizona doesn't do daylight savings?
There's a lot of places that don't. There are whole countries that don't do daylight savings time.
They're better than us.
I don't understand the point.
The point is that if you were a farmer, then you would think about getting up at a certain time, and I guess stores would be open when you were. I don't know. I really don't
So
know.
they should do that just for farmers.
Okay, so let's look right here at this graph. This is not the only one kind of like this, but it's a great point of reference. Tell me about green and blue.
What happened in April?
Before we go to April and New Bern, green and blue, are they similar? Similar. Okay. So Max wants to know about pink. So what do you think? Do you think that we have a little bit of light and we got more light and then we got a lot of light here? This might be a flaw in the math that we want to go check. And it's because of context. So what do I mean by context?
Contextualization.
No.
What's the context of this problem? Again, daylight hours. So think about that from the standpoint of you being a person walking outside and seeing daylight hours. In the winter, it gets dark earlier, right? And it's dark when we wake up. There's a lot more darkness. The daylight is less. And then we get more daylight. Does it happen gradually? Because this is kind of back to what Ben said about being connected or not. We have every day. We have today and then tomorrow and the next day. And it's going to keep doing this. Does the daylight hours as we get into June, do they increase or decrease? Increase. Do they increase in a way that's makes sense, or is it dramatic? Like from tomorrow, do we expect to have a whole more hour of daylight? No, a little bit more. And the next day a little bit more. The next day a little bit more. If you looked at the sunrise time on your chart, which I do have here, this is the sunrise side. Look, if we look at just January, the sun rises at 7:16, then 7:17, then it goes back to 7:16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, like it's by a minute every day, incremental. So even though we only graph this one point, is it continuous from 1 month to the next? This is 7:08. What happens here?
It goes down.
It's 7:07. It's just another minute. So the same thing is happening here. Starts over in February, still a minute, happens until we get to 6:48. Are there any dramatic days? No, they're all pretty much a minute. So I might argue that although we graph this as a just one day, that probably in between those periods it's still continuous. Like the amount of daylight hours from one day to the next is continuous. But I'm going to suggest that we fix this point And I might even ask to check this point right here. This point in the middle, okay? How about here? Does it look smooth and curvy without any random blips for daylight?
Yeah.
Okay, how about here?
I like that
Yes.
What?
He's
What's wrong with mine?
look how rigid it is.
I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
What happened at the blue?
We might want to just check this, okay? This might be something that we need to check because the maximum for green was in June.
The green looks really
The maximum for New York is in June. This is not the maximum. Maybe these two, just for point of reference, should be checked. This is harder for me to look at because I can't, because it's not connected.
You can draw lines if you need to.
Oh, you can draw lines. We'll check it. We'll look at it again. How about here? It's got a little bit of zig to its zag. So maybe we want to check this one. Well, this one's the one that matches. Maybe we wouldn't just check these in the middle. So if I had a pencil, I would probably circle these guys and it looks a little bit wavy. I might go back and do my math. And that's easy to do. I can help you with that. We can check it. This, again, dots, if I connect, they look pretty smooth and curvy. Do you think this blue one, we would draw a straight line and back down, or what's going to happen?
It's like curvy.
We would sort of, yeah, we would round it up when we do our graph because we don't have this graph to see. So here's another graph. This one has a little bit of roundness. So we don't just like abruptly turn around and have less daylight here. So this has, it's not exactly as curved as this one, but a little bit. So I like that. Looks good. How about here? Do we find any places we might want to fix a little? What happens to, yeah, so this is New York, has the same amount of daylight for 3 months in a row. Does that seem, I think New York probably in June has a little bit more. We would want to check this point. How about right here, from November to December? Do you have more daylight in December than you have in November? No. So we want to check this point too and just make sure. Am I making sense as we look through some examples? So I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm just trying to make sure that our data is good. How about the scale for this one? I can see the key, that's fine. But is this scale going to match my other ones? No. I do see the up. I do see the up. I don't know right here with them not connected that I noticed it all that well. So you might want to just check here, just to check. So with the graph, I can see easier whether your math makes sense or not. And so hopefully some of you went back, even if you told me in minutes, you went back to tell me in tenths, because that was part of the rubric. So you want to, because you're going to turn in your data as well for your final project, you want to check and make sure that you have this. Okay, because that's going to be easier to graph than y'all saying 21 minutes or whatever. All right. So the last part, decide what medium you will use for your final draft, markers, paint, pencils, collage. Create your own masterpiece. Also, this must be done by hand on the same vertical and horizontal scale as the paper provided. I'm not providing paper. Sorry, mark that out. I'm not giving you paper. You figure out your own paper. If you choose another flat medium, you must transfer the same scale. What's our scale? Half an inch. No computer or Excel graphs. I want you to graph it yourself. Put the year for your graph at the bottom of your page because everybody has a different year. Make sure to include a key so other people can tell which graph goes with which city. Then in a separate thing, so not on that page, right? Just on a different thing where you answer these questions, answer the 7 questions that talk about different places. So you might have to look up other stuff that says Sydney, Australia. You just want to think about what the daylight looks like, and then you might have to go back and do some math for it. You might go back and put Sydney in so you can see the numbers and make sense out of it. Yes, Max?
For number 2, does it have to be a city in the U.S.?
It just is not going to be not in Alaska. So I'm not sure you could find another city in the U.S. It probably have to be somewhere else.
Is Fairbanks in Alaska?
Yes. But you're trying to find for number 2 that has similar daylight. You have to think about that in context. That will help you figure out your graph. Okay, so.
And is that gonna go on your like final presentation thing or?
So the final presentation I want to be just like what I was putting up here that have the right scale. So just that.
Okay.
Your questions answered separately.
On
I'm not going to
another
post
piece of
those. Yeah.
Okay.
On another piece of paper. So not on the back. Well, I guess you could put it on the back, but then it might show through. Just do it on another piece of paper. Okay. So that's your project. It's due when?
Friday.
Next Friday. Like an actual project you're turning in to me, not taking pictures on Classroom. If you have questions, you should bring me what you have, and then let's talk about it in class. You have the whole week to ask me questions, or even tomorrow. So be sure to ask me questions so you can get all your points. Okay, that's the end of project discussion.